In a moment, we will witness the story of the Titanic and the process of how it sank. We will see the collision from inside the ship, examine real footage of the iceberg that sank the Titanic and the marks it left on the hull. Then, through an experiment, we will learn what those who fell into the water experienced, and we will follow the truth. The sound you just heard belonged to a distress call sent from the Titanic. Using the telegraph, calls for help were sent to other ships using Morse signals. The Titanic had begun to sink slowly. At the telegraph was a 25-year-old young man named Jack Phillips. He did not leave his post until the communications room was flooded. That young man acted heroically until the very last moment, but nothing he did was enough. The Titanic would be found for the first time 73 years after it sank, and everything would begin with the discovery of the wreck. The mysterious story of the Titanic actually began many years ago. In 1912, 111 years ago from today, newspapers ran headlines in huge letters announcing that the Titanic would set sail on her maiden voyage. An image of the ship and ticket prices were also published. The story of the Titanic was essentially based on a challenge. Transatlantic passenger transport was highly profitable and innovative, with shipping lines competing to carry wealthy travelers and immigrants. Two companies in particular were locked in competition. The White Star Line planned to build two ships and break records while crossing the Atlantic. But instead of building faster ships, they chose a different path. In 1908, the company assembled a massive workforce, mostly Irish laborers. Their goal was revolutionary: to build the largest, most luxurious, and most comfortable passenger ships ever designed. Their philosophy was simple. We may not be fast, but who wants to vomit their way across an ocean? Their aim was to dominate travel between Europe and America within 5 years. Eventually, the massive RMS Olympic was launched. At 45,000 tons, it was the largest ship the world had ever seen and could carry over 1,000 passengers. Shortly after, the company launched the ship that would truly capture the world's attention, the RMS Titanic. Approximately 14,000 people worked on the construction of the Titanic. When the ship was launched, around 200,000 people gathered to witness the event. Those who saw it felt as if the ground itself was moving rather than the ship. For people of that era, it was unimaginably enormous. Each anchor alone weighed 15 tons. The interior was furnished with the most extravagant and expensive decor. Some believed that instead of this obsession with luxury, the money should have been invested in technology. At the time, ships with 4 propellers and better maneuverability were being built. However, White Star Line did not want the Titanic to stand out for its technology. On April 10, 1912, the Titanic set off from England on her maiden voyage. Her destination was New York. Under the command of Captain Smith, the ship departed around noon. She would first stop at the French port of Cherbourg, then Queenstown, and finally head to New York. As the ship left port, operators were warned that there could be icebergs along the southern route. This was a common warning and was generally taken lightly in the Atlantic. At 9:30 p.m., a ship ahead of the Titanic reported large icebergs along its route. Although the warning was received by operators Phillips and Harold, it was never passed on to the captain. At the time, they were busy transmitting messages from first-class passengers to their contacts in New York, the fastest form of social communication of that era. The weather suddenly grew colder, as if death's icy breath was nearby. The sea was eerily calm, like glass. The Titanic had lookout stations known as the Crow's Nest, where 2 lookouts rotated every 2 hours. It was nearing midnight, and the ship was sailing south of the Grand Banks. One of the lookouts noticed something ahead, but it was hard to make out in the darkness. It was an iceberg. Frederick rang the ship's bell 3 times and called the bridge. First Officer Murdoch ordered, "Hard to starboard." Despite traveling at only about 40 kilometers per hour, stopping that massive structure was impossible. Just 37 seconds later, at 11:40 p.m., the Titanic struck the iceberg on her starboard side. The iceberg sliced the ship like a razor. Rivets beneath the waterline popped out, causing 5 compartments to begin flooding. The ship was taking in 400 tons of water per minute. Captain Smith summoned the ship's designer, Thomas Andrews, for an assessment. When Andrews inspected the compartments, His worst fear was confirmed. The ship was doomed. The order was given to abandon ship. Women and children were to board the lifeboats first. Passengers were awakened and informed that they must evacuate. Panic spread throughout the ship. One crucial task remained: calling for help. In emergencies, more signals were sent to nearby ships. Earlier, the Californian had stopped due to heavy ice and warned the Titanic. But the Titanic's operator, overwhelmed with messages, responded rudely, "Shut up, I'm busy." Later, Captain Smith personally ordered the operators to send distress calls. The Carpathia eventually responded, but it was 4 hours away, and the Titanic had less than 2 hours left. By then, the bow was submerged and the stern was rising into the air. Distress flares were fired, but due to unclear maritime regulations, nearby ships failed to recognize them as emergency signals. At 2:20 a.m., the Titanic disappeared beneath the Atlantic. Later experiments would show that those who fell into the icy water would lose motor function within minutes and die from hypothermia within half an hour. The iceberg did not strike the Titanic head-on. It scraped along the hull. This caused the rivets to pop out one by one, creating a 9-meter breach. Had the Titanic struck the iceberg at a different angle, there was a 99% chance she would not have sunk. The night was unusually dark. There was no moon. The sea was calm, and atmospheric conditions distorted visibility, hiding the iceberg until it was too late. The iceberg that sank the Titanic had broken off from Greenland 300 days earlier, drifting for months before reaching that fatal point. By dawn, survivors saw what had destroyed them. More than 1,500 people, mostly men and third-class passengers, lost their lives. Captain Smith was among them. Just hours earlier, families were sleeping peacefully. Within 3 hours, mothers handed their children over to freezing waters, fathers watched their families slip away, and lives were shattered forever. None of the survivors would ever forget that night. Behind this short story of the Titanic, many mysteries still remain. In the next episode, we will examine official reports and experiments, uncover the real marks left by the iceberg, and view astonishing footage of the Titanic wreck. Don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel to reserve your place for part 2.